I thought I said to go. All right. It looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. It's
Hi.
us again, two psychiatrists on a microphone. I'm Dr. Balanle Akinrambi, psychiatrist and founder at Bright Minds MD in New Jersey and also serve in New York. And I'm here with my friend and colleague.
Yes,
Introduce
Dr. Z or Dr. A.
Zainab Altaher of California.
That's yeah. We're tackling it from either coast. We're tackling all the questions.
The questions,
All coasts.
we got you covered. So today it's another child topic. And it's going to be a quick one.
Yeah.
The question today is about learning difficulties, IEPs, 504s, and the like.
Mhm.
So let me read our question. This is from a parent. I have concerns about my first grader's learning. She's my first, so I have a lot to learn. I think she might have dyslexia, but I'm not sure if it's normal at her age. She is still learning to read and write, and it's early in the school year. I don't want things to spiral, as she's already been saying things like, I don't want to go to school, it's too hard. How do I start the process of getting her evaluated? What is a 504? What is an IEP? Do I go to a doctor, a pediatrician, straight to a a psychiatrist, a psychologist? Who do I see? Where do I start from helping my child get help? We are in a public school for context. Handing it over to Dr. Altaher, the child expert here. What do we do?
Okay. So first grader, right? So, and depending if because at this age, it really matters how old they are. Like you can have a first grader that has a summer birthday that is just turned 6, or you can have a first grader that is about to turn, and that is a huge difference, between from the age these kindergarten, first grade, second grade. It makes such a huge difference. So if that's always kind of going through my mind is are we talking about a young first grader or a older first grader? Because there's so much, I think, in all psych and all child psych, the range of what we call normal or within range is so big,
Mm-hmm.
There are milestones with walking, talking, right? The pediatrician would always tell you, if your child, if they're walking are anywhere between 10 months to 18 months, that's all considered to be within expected range, or neurotypic range. So that's just something to keep in mind. The school year is starting, your first, and a lot can happen within 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I think the way to think about this with reading, and we go bird's eye view and say, okay, is this the only challenge that seems to be presenting? Are we talking about, it seems like it's only a reading thing, a writing thing, or are we talking about other stuff going on with this young child? Are there behavioral concerns? Are there emotional concerns? Are there other parts of development seem to be tracking within normal range? We're talking, socially, is the child able to make friends? How are they around their peers? Do they seem like they have back and forth interactions, toileting, feeding, sleeping? So I'm always thinking of when you go and think about your child, we're also thinking about this seems to be the identified problem, but we always want to think about are there other things going on, or are there other challenges presenting?
So beyond just the academic piece, you want to look a little more broadly. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Because especially with this parent is asking oh, my child is saying I don't want to go to school, and that my wheels are turning, and I'm thinking, is this the only issue? Is this the reason this child doesn't want to go, or are there other things is there something going on in the classroom, or what I mean, things like that? Is this an isolated thing, or is this part of a constellation of something else that's playing out? So for all intents and purposes, let's assume that there's no other difficulties, development is on par, and it seems to be like an isolated like reading issue, and this parent is asking about dyslexia and how do we navigate that. So first like intervention, or first thing I would like consider, is maybe doing something like a high level phonology, like a Sylvan learning or something like that, where we're just focusing, if it seems like it's just a reading issue, like let's just focus on that. Like just like there's a lot of programs online, there's a lot of like resources you can find just about that are like phonics based, which is tends to be like the overarching, like what we agree to be like the most the best way for children to like learn reading is like phonology based. So and so I would do something like that, like a Sylvan learning or some intervention like at home, or if you are at you don't have the bandwidth, you could always go to some center like that and just see what you can do, and give it like a few months, 4 to 6 months, where you're doing half an hour. This is a young child, so we don't want to overwhelm, but we're addressing it, and we're providing some support around that. Let's say time goes by, we're struggling, it seems like there's more frustration building, which we don't want, because we don't want, for kids this young, I think the most important thing when it comes to learning in school and any of that stuff is like that they feel confident and that they have a love and a desire to learn, and that's something that they like to do, because that's it's like their attitude toward their whole educational career, first grade. So I'll do something like that. Now, if we're like, okay, something's wrong, you got to listen to your parental instinct. If you're like, this isn't working, or this is leading to more frustration, then it's not a bad idea. Like your pediatrician, they're like the gatekeeper, right? They're seeing everything that's coming with your child and their development, not just physical development. It's not a bad idea to book an appointment with the pediatrician, because you likely have one, and they know your child and they can just make sure it's like a nice like first step, let's just make sure there's nothing, because they can check their eyes, they can check their, like there's things that you might not think are an issue, but maybe your child can't see the blackboard or something, so you like the pediatrician's a good first stop, I think, for most things in a young child. If it does seem like, okay, we want to go further, or next step, this whole like IEP 504, what is that? Do we go for a neuropsych testing, or when do we do what? I'll kind of try my best to like just break it down. And so this person being going to a public school, I think, and there's a big distinction, because public schools do things very differently than private schools. Public schools in most places around the country, you're funded by your district has funding, and that's like your tax dollars. And so at the district level, they're sort of the ones that are like deciding, the resources with people that are able to do testing and things like that. So the first step to like, what do I do, is you call your district, because every district is different. Some districts you go at the district level if you want any kind of like testing done, or, preliminary testing done. And then other districts, they go and they say, first stop is talk to the child's teacher, and you express concern. Hey, I'm having some trouble. I don't know if my child is on par. Are they behind? Do they need more support? How do we begin to like, explore this? And every school, every district has their way, so many times it's like, well, the teachers will kind of do some like screening, preliminary, standardized testing to kind of gauge like where the child is at, and if it needs to be looked into further. Okay. And they're expert. I mean, educators, I think there are angels, really, especially in the public schools, like where most of the time resources are tough. Like they know, they have seen this before. Okay. Like guaranteed they've been through. So it's a great, like, just like pop an email to your teacher or the district to make sure that like, okay, the teacher's the first stop, or do they have their own procedure? And then they'll kind of like give you some information if they think this is something we need to look at, or if they think this is like, no, actually she's like right where she needs to be, don't worry about it. Maybe try some Sylvan learning, maybe try some phonics and that, and then we'll regroup in 3 months, as like a lot of things can change. Now, this thing about IEP 504, a 504 is kind of, you think of it like it's a more of a general ask from the school, the teachers. It doesn't require testing, okay? So a 504, it's in one of the acts, for people to ensure they have access to resources. Every child can learn and has support, if they have any kind of, disability. I don't like that word, just difference. An IEP is an individualized educational plan. So an IEP, you think of it like it's a more specific thing, like if a child has a very specific thing they need in place to be able to learn on the same page and be on the same page with their cohort, their peers.
Let me have you clarify that again. So you're saying, so the 504 is a broad look at the child?
No, like
not identifying specific needs?
It's so a 504 and an IEP, they are things that a public school can offer to help the child, to be able to have the child be able to have what they need in order to learn. So a 504 is think of it like it's a support, or it's a cluster of supports that helps the kid be able to like stay in class, stay learning, stay engaged, but it doesn't require specialized learning services. Like
so these are like accommodations, essentially.
Exactly, right. And then an IEP is something where you need to have testing in order to have specific things. Like I'll just give you examples. A 504 is something like even a child that has like maybe type 1 diabetes, or they have, a visual impairment, or they have anxiety, or they have ADHD. Like it can be lots of different things, not just mental health stuff, where they need to take extra breaks, or they need to go to the nursing office to check their blood sugar. Like it's not something like they don't need special different types of things in their learning, in their curriculum in order to learn. They need just accommodations. Like we need this child to sit at the front of the class because they have something where they need to go to the bathroom more often, or we have ADHD, so we need motor breaks, or we have something where we need extra time, or we need to, use some kind of like device to help with taking notes or something like that,
So now that's a 504.
Yeah, a 504 is just accommodations. It's not like you need testing for it. You request it usually as a parent, like, oh, my child has anxiety, for example, like my child has anxiety, and it would be helpful for them that they have a code word with the teacher, and they get to go to the counselor's office and take a break, go to a calm corner or something like that, and then they can rejoin, but they don't have to have, like, they're still okay with the standard curriculum of teaching,
So this is negotiated directly with the teacher and the school.
Yeah, so it depends on the district, but a lot of times it's a parent making a request to the teacher, and they might have a meeting or two where the teachers better understand what the needs are, or a lot of teachers will do it automatically. Like they'll see a kid that just needs is just more,
more space. A kid needs space in between classes. I've seen that.
Teachers often do these accommodations like unofficially, like, oh, this kid is really chatty, I'm going to bring them over here and seat them beside this, or this person does better when they're on, like, you're just kind of like using what you already have, you're not putting anything new in, or like this person needs to take a break, or like I said, like their accommodation is they need to go to the nursing office, to have something, like that.
Okay. So what if you need an IEP? What besides that, and how do you clarify that?
Good question. So the teachers and the district, they would know when we need to do more testing. Let's say it doesn't seem like it's something that can be solved with like extra time, or moving the kid, or giving them some kind of accommodation that's like easy to do. Then they would do what we call psychoeducational testing. And so that's where we get into the district level, because they're trying to identify, okay, this student is learning in a way that is different than like the general like class. And so we need to see, do they have dyslexia? Do they have a reading comprehension issue? Do they have, a verbal expression disorder? Do they have an auditory processing disorder? So you would need to have like psychological testing to be able to know those things. And so for those things, so that goes the district, and that's why we pay tax dollars. And so they would do that testing with a psychologist. And usually the district partners with psychologists that come in and service different schools, and they test students to see where is their learning at, what do they need more support in. And then based on that, they can decide, okay, this student needs to have, extra help in math, or they need to have what we call like pull out services or push in services, or they need to have a learning specialist beside them during their classes, or they need to go to this thing called a resource room. Like they decide based on where the student is at with their learning, like what do they need? What do we need to supplement the standard curriculum with so that the student is able to learn, like on par, so that they're not falling behind. So that's an IEP. That's why it's individualized learning. Like the curriculum is not cutting it for these students, and we need to like kind of infuse the program with more things, pull in, push out, resource room. Sometimes it's like speech therapy, for kids that are on the spectrum. Sometimes
so who does these assessments? You mentioned that these are specialized assessments. So do you go to I guess depending on, I'm imagining depending on what you need, then you'll decide together with the pediatrician where you need to go. I know that a psychiatrist might do some of these. I know that a psychologist might do some of these, but not everything is in the psychiatric or mental health realm. So say someone's having speech issues, they'd go to a speech therapist and so on. What other specialties tend to help with creating an IEP in terms of the assessments required? Or are there a specific set that's required for every child who needs an IEP?
Yeah, it depends. It really depends on the issue. Like if it's depending on the complexity of the issue, it will be like sort of if they get their answers with very basic testing, they'll stop there. But if it seems like they're not understanding where the blockage is, they go into like further testing. If it seems like things are not on the same page, like the school or the district sees this issue, but you're not agreeing, or you're thinking, you can always as a parent go and get your own like private, unbiased, or like not through the district neuropsych testing, but that, I think that's not, I wouldn't recommend that as like a first step, especially in a kid like this. Like it's a young child. We haven't tried anything yet. We don't know. First, we don't know if the teachers are saying they're on par, because the parent mentions this is her first, right? So like the range of normal, you could have a baby that is like, walking at 18 months versus 10 months. And like a first time parent would think, oh my God, they're late. But you go to the pediatrician or you ask the teacher, they're like, no, there's early and there's middle and then there's later. So that's where like these other steps, like I wouldn't advise this parent to like jump and go straight to like a psychologist, for example, or even if it's an isolated issue, I wouldn't even advise them to come to someone like me, because, there's a lot of other things you can do before then.
So let me see if I was paying attention then. You're recommending going from a broad base to a specialized base. So in general, first, do something like Sylvan Learning or other kind of learning to actually ensure that they are being taught the material, they're being presented with the material in a way that they can understand, I think is the first step. Then you go to pediatrician who knows the kid well as the teacher who knows the kid very well and also has a broad understanding of what many kids look like in this age and the broad range that's involved. And then from there, you might then be recommended to either see a psychiatrist, psychologist. Maybe all you need even at that level is A504, which is broad accommodations. And then for kids who need more, we're looking at an IEP, which is a more individualized plan for that specific child and their specific needs.
Yeah.
Am I a good student?
You got it.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up. Did you have any last thoughts before we wrap up today, Z?
I think the bottom line, if you have a question about your child and their development, and you don't know if this is like normal or outside the realm of normal, Honestly, I would advise just go to your pediatrician, because the likelihood is they have seen this or some variation of this issue or question thousands and thousands of times, and they can kind of like advise you, when to do what, when to see who. And then and not also not a bad idea, and that same thing of like touch base with a teacher and just see, because that could be reassuring enough to kind of put it on their radar, because those, think of them that they're going to be your partner in your child's education, and it's a good first step. So
awesome. Thank you. Great summary, Dr. Al-Daher. So if anyone's listening or listens later and has more questions about this, we can definitely delve into this next week when we come back to talk about this. So ask your questions below. We've been also kind of getting questions, I think, or inquiries regarding, parenting styles, gentle parenting versus authoritative parenting or authoritarian parenting. What's recommended. So we're thinking we're going to talk about this if it's something people are interested in. If there are any questions you want to send in for us to kind of tackle, it helps us to know what people are interested in. What we're going to talk about, definitely let us know. It's been a great pleasure chatting, at lunch or post-lunch time today. Thank you again, Dr. Al-Daher Zainab, for joining me today to talk about it. And thanks again, everyone who listened. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care now. All right.
We'll see you again.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.